Thank you, Phil. That's a great way for us to start and collect our mood and our spirit in a new context. First thing I want to do is say that Shakespeare was right after all. If you know the play Julius Caesar, Caesar's walking through the crowd when a soothsayer calls out, "Beware the Ides of March!" Today is the Ides of March. And while it didn't actually happen, it is a fact that Shakespeare was pointing to the fact that on this day, in 44 BC, Julius Caesar was assassinated. We are not going to replay that drama this morning. But it does mean that plans that we make long ago don't come out the way we expect them. And thanks to coronavirus, Sanctuary is different today, and Fountain Street Church is different today. If you don't know, my name is Fred Wooden. I am the preaching pastor here at Fountain Street Church. To my left is my colleague in ministry, Christopher Rowe, who is our minister of spiritual life and learning. And to his left is Andy DeBraber, who is what we call our interim minister of our chapel community, an almost experimental form of Fountain Street Church that he is shepherding and caring for. And ordinarily, you folks would be meeting at 9:30 this morning, but we decided that at least for this Sunday, we would combine our efforts because we are one church with many faces. And I want people to know that we do try to create one sense of Fountain Street Church. So I'm actually going to be addressing the topic of being church in the time of COVID-19. So we're all going to take part. And so I'd like to be reminding you that you are watching us here in the sanctuary, but we are really everywhere you are. We're right now on YouTube, and if you're watching us on YouTube, feel free to comment because we can hear what you're talking about and have that conveyed. We can do things in response to your virtual presence, even as we are virtually present in your lives. And one way of being spiritual is to ask people who know how to do it to help us out. I've asked Andy particularly to help summon a different kind of spiritual presence in a different time. Chapel has always defied labels of church, so I'm thinking you can probably do this better than almost anyone in this room. Andy, could you kind of summon whatever spirit of chapel you can to be with us today?
I will do that. Thank you, Fred. It's a joy to be here with you all virtually and with colleagues here in the building. In chapel, our promise is that you can create the life of deeper meaning and greater value your heart desires. It will take practice, and help is available. And this is a great time to be considering how we're creating a life of deeper meaning and greater value. And so I want us to enter into a little practice around that. So first, just take a deep breath and let it out slowly. That's a practice in and of itself. Helps us to relax a little bit, to pause, to slow down. One of the ways that you can practice that in this time when many of us are more anxious is to do what's called a 4x4 breathing exercise. So you breathe in for 4 beats, hold it at the bottom for 4 beats, breathe out for 4 beats, and even hold it at the top for 4 beats. So continue that. And what has been found to be true is that will reduce our levels of anxiety and bring us to a greater place of peace. So that's the first thing. The second, I wanted to focus on breathing because it connects us all. We are all around the globe, breathing the same air. And boy, don't we know that now more than ever. Yesterday, I was out on a bike ride with my daughter, Anna. And there were more people out on the trail than I would have expected for a cloudy 38-degree day. So many of them would have been doing something else, but instead they were out riding, which is a wonderful thing to get people outside. And Anna says, you know, she's home for spring break from Michigan Tech, and she says, you know, I'm losing track of time. I don't know if we've been out here for a half hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. And we just stopped to appreciate this moment when so many of us can lose track of time in a good way. We've been looking at altered states of consciousness and being in chapel, and those altered states often help us lose that sense of time, that social construct, really, that is time, whether that's through experiences of awe and wonder, through meditation, through sleep and our dreams even. Some of us don't have to get up like we've had to for many months. We can rest a little longer in these days. Being creative, right? There's this state of flow that we can enter in being creative. This is a great time now to be creative artistically or with crafts or with music. So find some places where you can lose yourself. Today, this weekend, this week, where you can lose track of time. And remember to breathe. Take those deep breaths that not only connect us with one another around the globe, but they connect us with those who have gone before us in time immemorial and those who will come after. We are breathing the same air. So one more time, just pause, take that deep breath, let it go, and enter into this time of experiment, of being together, of working on it all in ways that we haven't done before, but we know that when we do it together, we can find a life of deeper meaning and greater value.
Amen to that. And that would be an appropriate word because it had a prayerful quality, Andy. And now that we're supposed to avoid touching folks, we have to find other ways to respond to what people say and do. And I'm going to get Christopher, my buddy, to help me out here. You don't have to shake hands, so you probably should go right by like this. But in many Islamic countries, men particularly greet each other by bowing like that. And that's very respectful when you think about it. They would say salam alaikum, and the response would be what? Come on, alaikum al-salam. Come on, you know this stuff. Hindus, we all know some of this. They hold their hands like this, bow, and they may say namaste or namaskar, which some people say means the river, the divine in me, but actually among most Hindus it means hello. But hello is still a worthy greeting. In Japan, where I was for a little while, you bow, and the one that's younger bows lower than the one that's older. Come on, go. There you go. And that's still the common practice there. And if you remember, you can say konnichiwa, which means good day, unless it's morning, which it still is. You could say ohayo gozaimasu, but we're not going to get into linguistics today. I was in Zimbabwe last May, and I learned that when you greet someone, especially someone you know, the person who arrives claps once, and the other person claps twice. An interesting way to greet one another. I gave an invocation at an Orthodox Jewish law school once, and it happened that the presenter was a woman, and the Orthodox men don't shake hands with women they don't know, so they shake hands like this. And of course, in Japan, yeah, there you go. And I don't know if you've been in martial arts, but an old Chinese way of greeting is to hand over fist and bow like that. But those are the old ones. There are some other ways we do it now in America. We just, hey, how you doing? How about this? Dude, hamburger and fries. Or if you're really close to somebody, come on, like that. And if you're just passing somebody, you just go, sup. So there are a lot of ways to greet one another in a way that means something. We should have a larger vocabulary. And I know, because it is so pleasant to touch someone. But right now, physical touch has to be replaced with a spiritual touch, which can be just as real. As Monica was telling me earlier, and we'll talk with her later, she loves that, so she hugs herself. What a great way to say, I'm hugging you this way. So we're encouraging all of you to adopt affectionate, safer spirituality. How about that? We're going to go for safer spirituality. Thank you, Christopher. Now, you are the pastor, leader, guide to all of our learning ministries from youngest up to high school and beyond. Why don't you enrich our morning this morning?
Well, every week I get up here and I speak out to the community at the 11 o'clock and I offer a moment of learning from the Learning Commons. And I enjoy that time. It's a fun time to bridge what happens up in character school and what happens in the Fountain Club and Fountain Off Fountain. And I'll admit that already I'm overwhelmed with how hard this is. I'm looking at an empty room, and I'm seeing exactly where so many familiar and wonderful faces are. I'm missing Carol Koister right there, and Evie Bowers right there, and Bill and Mary Thompson, and the parents of our families up there. You know, we've got Shelley and Tony Cruz and Jeffries, and we've got, oh my God, Elizabeth Seller. Everybody has their place here, and I'm missing them this morning. I always wave to Judy Botts right there. It's difficult. One of my colleagues in New York posted this yesterday on Twitter, and it just moved me so much. It's from Jackie Lewis at a really awesome church there. She said, "It's scary to watch everything getting canceled, to see empty streets or watch Broadway go dark. But these are really signs of hope. People making tough and painful decisions to reduce viral transmission. Right now, love looks like an empty stadium." I know in a little bit Fred's going to be talking to us about faith, I think. Eventually, he'll be talking about faith. And I think we could tweak that a little bit and say that right now, for all of us, faith looks like an empty church. I think it's one of the most bold and beautiful exercises we can do here at Fountain Street Church, to embrace that act of faith. And faith might look like sitting around a table in the middle of a school week when your kids should be at school and maybe you should be at work. Faith might look like interrupted plans, canceled events. But my prayer for all of you this week, which is how I end every moment of learning, my prayer for you is you find shock and awe and wonder in the moments of faith that you're invited to believe in this week.
Cool. Thanks. And amen to that, too. I think one of the hard parts for us is we like being in this space because it gives us a sense of wonder and awe. And we think this is because it's a religious space. But I think it's worth remembering that religion is not a spot, it's a way of being. For example, we're religious liberals, so we don't like certain words, and we tend to go by them, like amen or prayer or thee and thou, and we forget those were just ordinary words when they were first being used. So we should remember that even if we are not orthodox in our beliefs, even if you are not a believer in any particular God, you probably pray. And that's odd to say, but what I mean is that prayer comes from a word that means please, as in I'm asking a favor. I think there's not a soul in the world, believer or non, who in West Michigan weather didn't find themselves behind the wheel, gripping it with white knuckles, say, please let me get home in this snowstorm. Which does not mean you believed in God. It meant you realized that there were forces larger than you at work and that you were hoping they would not overwhelm you. And that's what a prayer is. It's recognizing that you're in a larger context and you're trying to perceive yourself in it. And that can have a lot of shapes. Sometimes it is just that. You're overwhelmed. And we feel overwhelmed now with this mysterious virus that it could be anywhere at any time. So we're feeling a little bit of trepidation. But it can also be when the world is big, you feel small, and it's utterly thrilling. I mean, you've all been in places, whether it's the Grand Canyon or at the sea, where nature just overwhelms you with its immensity, but you don't feel threatened. You feel blessed by being in it. You're still small, but you don't feel afraid. Or you might have a moment when you realize that you were really fortunate. Things could have gone badly for you and things came out okay, and you go, whew, and you feel gratitude. Or finally, there might be a moment when you look back and realize there was something you did wrong and you're feeling bad about it. Well, those comprise 4 basic prayers. Anne Lamott says 3 of them are help, thanks, and wow. And in fact, Meister Eckhart, a great Christian mystic, said there really is only one prayer. Thank you. I would like to add that sometimes oops is a very legitimate prayer. But my point is, all of us pray whether we use the language or not. And so we're going to try that now. And I'm going to get Phil to move to the piano so that we can spend a few moments with you praying the way you know how. But I'm going to help you. I want you all to think of a moment in your past, obviously, And I want you to recall the details, not just the general thing. Where were you? With whom? What the occasion was. So you can really get that feeling back. And when Phil plays, what I want you to do is to let that moment be in your heart again. Were you feeling the need for help? The desire to say thanks? Were you pleased with the way the universe was present to you? Were you feeling sad about something that you did or someone did? I want you to live in that experience for a moment, because prayer is not a word, it's a moment of feeling. I don't want you to get up and go fill your coffee cup while Phil is playing. That would be mean. I want you to actually sit there. The Quakers have a great saying, they're a contemplative group, don't just do something, sit there. That's my advice to you as we enter into a time of prayer. However that is your experience, think back. Catch a moment. Who were you? How old were you? Was it warm? Was it cold? Were you alone? Were you with someone? Dig into the details and find the feelings of who you were in that moment that meant so much to you. And be in that moment and in this time of prayer. Phil. Thank you, Phil. I appreciate that very much. Before I move on, I want to say thanks to Andy and to Christopher for working with me this morning. We work together all week long. This is the only time, though, you may see us together, because minister is not a noun. It is a verb, to serve. And together we serve this church better than I could by myself or any one of us could alone. What's more, we couldn't do it without our staff, which would include today Danny Heck and Virginia Anson-Gruber, and the others who make it possible for us to reach beyond ourselves. And they couldn't do it if you members out there listening and friends were not part of the endeavor. Our tasks are really very simple. I wore my shirt today: free the mind, grow the soul, change the world. That's what liberal religion does. And it is a superhuman task. But superhuman just means it takes more than one person. So the more we work together, the more we are able to do this for ourselves and others. That makes me talk about what I would ordinarily put right now as the offering. Now, we don't have ushers here today, and you're not here to offer anything. But I want to talk about it because that's a symbol of how we work together. The offering comes from a very ancient practice of Christians who would bring bread and wine to their worship, that the bread and the wine they made, and to share at what would become communion or the Eucharist. Now, if you remember last year, I invited you to start your own sourdough so you could be making your own bread with natural yeast. Well, I've kept it up. And there's a lump of dough in my home getting bigger right now. Whether it turns into good bread or not is only partially up to me. The yeast have to go along with it. But I enjoy doing it because I can make it with my own hands. And that's what makes it sacred to me. The word sacrament means to make something holy. And when I can do something with my hands that nourishes another person, it feels sacred. Money doesn't feel that way, but the reality is money is how we are compensated for the work we do. And when we give it, we are in fact giving of ourselves. Winston Churchill famously said, "You make a living from what you earn, you make a life from what you give." So we are here to make a life. So I'm urging you, if you can take a moment, if not this moment, to go to our website, fountainstreet.org, and contribute. You can also do so with text to give, which should appear on your screen. We have decided that the money that you give during this COVID-19 era will be dedicated to helping those who are imperiled by it, whether health-wise, food-wise. We have always been giving to the community. We want to make sure we do it even more so now. And we are going to be finding ways to do so with our own hands, but your dollars also make that happen. So I just wanted you to know that now is the time for your offering. Since you are not physically here, we cannot take it from you by hand. So you cannot bring your actual bread here, but share your bread with those who need it most. Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on. I imagined this Sunday some months ago I was going to focus it around a piece of music that I wished to feature in my year of preaching musically. Well, that's not going to happen. But as I remember, John Lennon said, life is what happens while you're making other plans. And so life is happening to us. And let's see if I can make some lemonade out of the lemons that got poured out last week. When people think of church, what do they think? They think of big buildings. And we got a big one. It's a monster. Look at this thing. It's gorgeous. If you ask almost any Fountain Streeter what they think of when they think of Fountain Street Church, they think of this space, don't they? That's great. It's almost 100 years old. It is distinct, it is marvelous, it is beautiful, it is our space. What's more, we have an organ over there that is as big as the space when it sounds. I've heard notes so low they feel like they're rumbling in my belly, not in my ear. It's an impressive location to be. Awesome. Isn't that the word we use now? Awesome. That's awesome. It's really awesome. And that's the thing we're missing by you not being here. And then I thought of a book that I haven't read, but the title stays with me, The God of Small Things. I don't know the book. I've read about it, though. It's a tragic book about an Indian family caught in the patterns of caste life, of colonialism. But Arundhati Roy, the author, lifts up that phrase to signify that we end up worshiping the small things as well as the big things. And I thought maybe that could also be good, especially now. For example, I have a bowl in my office, here it is, and it's got rocks in it. And if you ask me about the rocks, I will tell you. I started picking up rocks when I traveled, and the first one I picked up was this one. I shouldn't have picked it up, but remember Julius Caesar? Well, he really did exist, and this little white rock right here, that one, comes from the Roman Forum. And so when I hold it in my hand, I can go back to Rome, and I can go back 2,000 years and touch it. And that helps me feel connected. That's one of them. This one's a much sadder rock. It's also kind of white. Can you see it? This was on the parade ground, as they called it, of Dachau concentration camp. In those days, they didn't have the elaborate tortures they were to develop later. At the beginning of the war, the most inconceivably cruel torture they could come up with, which is inconceivably cruel, was they made everyone at the camp stand at attention all day. And I kept one of these rocks to remind myself of the cruelty, the simple cruelty that we deal out to one another. This reddish one here comes from the beach at Normandy. I'm not sure if some soldier walked on it. It's a cinch. It's older than any of us. But it reminds me of things that outlast even human cruelty. There are stones here. I don't even remember where I got them, but I know which one is. I can tell you they all came from places I've been. And that's a way of staying connected to the when I am stuck in my aloneness. It brought the big things of history down to human size. I think we can all do that now. I think we need to do that now. Because if you're home and you're not going out, you have to create your awe. You can't just have it delivered to you in a giant space. And so I thought, who knows about making awe at home? And a name came to mind, Monica Stegman, who has a story and a craft. And I wanted her to help demonstrate how she does it, because you might want to do the same thing. Monica, could you help me out? I want you to tell us how you find awe in small things. I'm going to give you this microphone, okay? And as soon as and let's leave room here, because this is all your stuff here, right? Okay, now, Monica, you're an artist, and yet this is more than being an artist to you. So I'd like you to tell me a little bit of the story of how this came to be part of your life, both as a person and an artist. I'm going to grab a stool so I can sit nearby.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to give you a virtual hug right now, because you know I love to hug.
Yep.
So this is going to be hard for you to see, I know, because we don't have the capability right now to do close-up, so I'll try and describe, because I have very tiny things here. But to go back to the beginning, my background is growing up in a Catholic family where my father would take me every Saturday to the Catholic Rosary and Bookshop to pick up supplies to take to church the next day.
Yeah.
And when we would go on these trips, my father would buy me little figurines. So I had little Marys and Jesus and Joseph and saints, and I would line those up in my closet on a shelf, and that became my safe space, because my home wasn't always the safest. And over time, now as an adult, I could reflect on that, and those little figures became my superheroes. They were my protectors, and I think I carried that into my adult life in the form of my artwork. So that's the beginnings of this, and what I want to help everyone at home with today is how do you bring that safety into your own home? And you have objects in your house already that are meaningful, but it's the process of intention So I brought some things with me today, some of my artwork, some things that I have scattered in different places in my house, on my mantle. I do have a cubby space that is my meditation space that I crawl up a ladder and get into. So some items are from there. But the first thing I'm going to show you is this is my mother painted when she was younger.
Oh.
This is a brooch that was handed down to my grandmother from my great-grandmother. It doesn't have great monetary value, but it connects me to these women and my lineage. And I feel them around me when I have intention around these pieces. I also have some special rocks that, the cool thing about rocks is they're cold until you hold on to them. And then your warmth brings warmth to the rock. And that feeling is what I feel in my heart when I bring intention to things. This piece right here is a cross, but it has milagros. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
That's the Mexican word for miracle.
Yeah.
And I got this in the Southwest. And this is a way for people to tangibly show what they are praying for. There's hearts, there's a stomach on here, a pig,
Yeah.
a leg, all different things.
Oh, yeah.
Here is my globe that I use that helps me. It's actually an old bank. I love vintage pieces. For one reason is because they have a history that I don't necessarily know about. I don't know who owned this originally when it was first bought, but I like the fact that I'm connected to other people through an object.
I'll be with that.
And I know you can't see this from the camera angle, but this piece of fabric right here is actually a prayer shawl from a very dear woman, Grandmother Flor de Mayo, who is one of the grandmothers of the Sacred We, and she has used this in ceremonies. And so it gives me a connection not only to her, but to all of these women throughout the world that are praying and working for what I would say is human evolution on a spiritual level.
I understand. I'm going to take that back. So what I'm hearing you say, Monica, is that we're always surrounded by objects that have meaning and reverence for us. It's a matter of thinking about them and perhaps pulling them forward in our minds and hearts, and also physically putting them in a place that has a little bit of intention, honor, if you will, and that you can do this at home. And in fact, lots of cultures have done this for many, many years. You can find home altars in lots of cultures that are not ours. And they have different stories and different meanings, but the idea was there was a spirit in the home itself that belonged to the family. In ancient Rome and Greece, for example, the fire always burnt because it was understood that the fire had a spirit in it that sustained the home. And maybe one of the things we can learn by being at home more because of this COVID-19 is to remember that our homes are sacred places too, have powers to not only protect us, but to strengthen us. Do you feel strengthened by these? Do these feel like they give you that sense of wholeness or at least durability?
Yes. Yes, and grounding and connection. For me, spirituality is connection. It's a word to me that is kind of mysterious and magical, and fantastical. So I can connect with what I see as all of creation. I can, in my mind, connect with someone who has passed, that I don't see physically anymore. I can connect to a whole world and to what I want to see happen in that world. One of the things I really connect with also is nature, and I do use a lot of natural pieces in my artwork. But one practice that I love is knowing that when I look up at that moon at night, it's the same moon that every other human in the entirety has looked at. Yeah. It's not a different one, it's the same one. Yeah. And when my girls were little, they're both adopted from China, they used to go to heritage camp here in town, and one of the songs that they would sing is, I see the moon sees me, and the moon sees the person that I want to see. So it's a way of connecting to other people. And right now, I feel really lonely. Yeah. Even though I have my family at home, I don't have my friends right here with me. Yeah. And so it's about finding creative ways to feel grounded and connected.
Absolutely. Monica, thank you. This was not only thank you for bringing it, but for sharing why it's important to you. The trouble with reverence is it's very personal, isn't it? Yeah. It's not just a space. It is how you feel in a space. And you've created that space. Well, you want to say something more?
Yes. Please. Yeah, I just want to point out that some of the art pieces that I put together, which I call little shrines, it's about giving new meaning to things. So for instance, this piece, I'm going to hold it up. It's actually an old Mother Mary Catholic figure that's an old planter that I have re-envisioned and used Mary as a universal symbol. So she's not just a Catholic person anymore. And it helps me to heal. Well, something I'm noticing in this piece, and you can't see it in detail as I can, is that there's a broken plate that has been repurposed as part of her halo, as part of her person. And it's not putting the plate back together as a plate. It's using the plate as part of another way of being. And I think what I'm hearing, Monica, is that sometimes we take the broken parts of ourselves, and if we lift them up, we don't fix them as much as we find new meaning in our future so that we're not stuck in our past. Anything else before we go? Yeah, I think we're in a time right now that where we feel broken. We are broken. We don't know what the future holds. So we have the power personally to make that future. Are we going to throw those broken pieces away because they don't mean anything and we don't want to look at them? Or are we going to make something beautiful out of it? And that's what I get from being in my chapel community, which I really missed today. So if any of you are out there watching, I love you and I miss you. It's hard right now, but you're showing us a way in which we can be intentional about not losing touch, and that's really wonderful. And for all of you who are listening and watching, you can do this. And in fact, I would love it if you would find an object or two in your homes, if that's where you have to spend most of your time. Take a picture. Send it to us here at the church. We might be able to share it, because that way you can be present in your symbols, even if it's not easy to be present in person. Monica, you have blessed us by sharing so much of yourself today. If you don't mind, I'll let this stay here, and I'm just going to add a few more words, because I really can't say more than you have and make it any better than you did. Thank you. Namaste, salam alaikum, all those good words.
Now, this is about awe, but there are two other things that we need from church in this age of COVID-19. And that's that personal connection. That's one of them. And it gets harder and harder. And if you have social media and you use it, it can be a big help. But even if you don't, you still need, even if you do, you still need more than likes and posts. You have to do something that's actually you. So I'm going to give you some ideas for how you can enhance your sense of connection to other people. And that means you have to do it. You can't be the one to receive it. You have to make it happen. Tell a story. And that probably means writing down something that happened to you. If it happened to you here at Fountain Street Church, I'd like to know about it. We are only our stories in the end. Things happen, and if we forget them, they never existed, did they? But if you write it down and share it, it will stay with us. So write a story. You can write it down. You can call me on the phone. You can tell us in any way you want something that is important to you, especially if it pertains to this spiritual community. We can enrich the community with our memories, even if we can't be present to each other in body. Tell a joke. We are way too serious these days. I saw a great joke posted on social media. I'll share it. It's a visual. You have to have a little knowledge here. And it's a picture of a guy in a toga sitting on a couch next to a giant boulder. And the caption reads, "Sisyphus working at home." Okay. We all have to deal with the silliness that emerges in this time. You might even share a joke and tell someone to pass it on. Send a letter. Not a post, not an email. Send a letter. Sit down, write it down with you. Nothing feels more human than handwriting. It doesn't have to be fancy, but write it with your own hand on a piece of paper. Put it in an envelope. Don't lick the envelope, please. Just put a little bit of a sponge over it. Send it in the mail to someone you know. And it'll arrive and it'll be like you showed up in person. And yes, call people on the telephone. If you don't have someone you call every day, find someone who deserves a call and make that call. In fact, I'll put a challenge in front of you. If you're not connecting with at least 3 people a day, make a resolution to do just that. Because if you're waiting for the world to come to you, it's not, but you can still go to the world. You know, this is still Lent. And people do things in Lent, like giving up chocolate or giving up alcohol. But I want you to take on the task of connecting to other people. Take on the task of creating some awe in your home. And the third thing we know we need from church is to have a life that has meaning and purpose, which usually means service. And it's hard to serve others when you're stuck inside. And yet you can. You cannot be together in large numbers, but you can be together in small ways and in small gatherings. Just this past week, the board and staff got together, and I see 2 board members who are physically present, but more than 6 feet away. And one of them was saying, let's be more proactive about helping other people right now. Let's make sure the people who are really going to suffer now, the children who are out of school who need lunches, the folks who are on the street who have fewer resources than ever, how can we be present to them? And whether that's in person or through our donations, that's the way we can be more present and have a more meaningful relationship to a world that's distant. I've asked the Social Action Committee to suggest ways we can do that. They're giving us ideas. And naturally, we have to go to those who are most powerless, like I said, children, the poor, the unhoused, those who are sick and infirm. As we learn more about how to do that, we'll communicate how you can take part in that. This week, Christian churches read a passage from the Gospel of John that includes the words, "The hour is coming when we will worship God neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem, but in spirit and in truth." There's a reminder that neither this mountain nor this Jerusalem is where we need to do our worship. We can do it in spirit and truth. In fact, when we live in spirit and in truth, we are in the act of worshiping. We all learned something as children that is just as true now as it was then. It's going to be hard with the microphone. Here's the church, here's the steeple. Open the door, and there's all the people. Well, the church is the people, not the building. And now is our time to be the church without the building, so that when we come back into the building, we know it is we who give it life, not it that gives us life. So, this trial may turn out to be a great gift if we turn it into one, the same way you took that plate and gave it the life of a halo. A gift that allows us to remember that Fountain Street Church really does have the gift of the waters of life, but not just for ourselves. We're going to go out and let it flow wherever we are. Duncan Littlefair famously said, every week, this is a day which the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. That's a spiritual discipline. We have to find reason to be rejoicing, to be glad, because every day is a gift. So Phil, I'm going to get you to get ready because we're almost at the end of our service. Next week, I will begin 4 messages that still are forming in my head because they're not the ones I planned. I'm going to take our Advent themes and apply them to Lent right now. Faith in the age of COVID-19. Where do we find the things we can trust? Hope in the age of COVID-19. To what can we look forward? Love in the age of COVID-19. How do we love one another when we can't touch the way we used to? And finally, joy on Easter Sunday. Joy in the age of COVID-19. To remember that we do not always find joy where we look for it. Sometimes it's in the emptiest of places. We're going to make a whole lot of lemonade. I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad you tuned in today. We will be back again next week. And help us out by telling us how we can do this. Help us by sending pictures, your ideas, your thoughts. It is time for us to be Fountain Street Church in a whole new way. Rejoice in that and be glad. And I will say one last time, amen. And Phil, help us all appreciate the day.